Hello, and thank you for joining us on the Optimal Wealth Podcast, where we discuss creating passive income through real estate. Our mission is to help educate investors on how to grow wealth and invest passively. My name is Jarod Alexander, and I am a passive investor, currently in 6 syndications as a limited partner. I am also the founder of Optimal Equity Group, which is a real estate investment firm that was created primarily to help educate the passive investor. We do that in a couple of different ways. One is we provide education to help give you the confidence to get into the passive investing space. And two, each episode we will interview amazing guests that explore the strategies, insights, and secrets used by successful investors. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just starting out on your real estate journey, this podcast is designed to help give you the confidence and knowledge you need to make informed and profitable decisions. Welcome to another episode of the Optimal Wealth Podcast. My name is Jarod Alexander, and I am your host. And today I'm super excited to announce our special guest here. We have Yonah Weiss. Yonah, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jarod. A pleasure to be on the show.
Well, it's great to have you. You know, Yonah here is known for his expertise in the cost segregation space, and they call him the cost seg king. And you know, he's I've heard Yonah Weiss on a few podcasts, actually seen him on Bigger Pockets, and just really, you know, it's a unique niche to be in, right? To get involved in the cost segregation space. And so really before we get started, Yonah, we're definitely going to touch on that, but if you could, let's go into a little bit more of your background, how you got involved in real estate and what led you into, working with Madison at the, cost segregation level there.
Absolutely. So I wasn't always in real estate, as many people start out in some other field. I actually was a teacher for about 15 years, and that's really my background. It's always been my passion ever since I was very young. But that really led me in a really interesting fashion that I had a little bit of a health crisis in my family at a certain point about 10 years ago. And it really led me to kind of reconsider, what I was doing professionally, and if there was some other things I could do to help make some more money, maybe bring some more wealth into the family, which I never really considered beforehand. And real estate kept coming up in conversation whenever I mentioned it to friends. And so I kind of on a leap of faith, I just like, hey, why not? I don't really have anything else going on right now, so I'd love to just find it. And serendipitously, I ran into a good friend of mine, and I knew he was involved in real estate, but I didn't know exactly what he did. It turned out he was a commercial real estate broker for many years and also owned a bunch of small multifamily properties on his own that he self-managed, and his family had experience in that as well. And so I literally just spent time with him in his office for about 8 or 9 months, just literally every day, just hanging out with him, learning everything there was to know about commercial real estate, including underwriting and prospecting, whether it's cold calling or just researching, properties and researching owners, et cetera. And so we had a good time together, and I learned a tremendous amount. And that was really my foray into real estate. I ended up getting my real estate broker's license just to kind of get a feel of, what that was like. I ended up doing a few fix and flips. But it wasn't until about 7 years ago or so that I was introduced to this company, Madison Commercial Real Estate. Madison Specs, the biggest national cost segregation company, that I really kind of found my niche. And I found a space where I was able to use my experience as a teacher to really educate people about this topic that was clouded in a lot of mystery, right? People hear this. First of all, in general, taxes, and I'm sure anyone who's listening to this podcast, taxes, and they're brains shut off, right? I don't want to have anything to do with that. That's why I have a CPA, so I don't have to think about that stuff. But the truth is, if you're a real estate investor, this is a gold mine. to unlock the value of understanding the tax code and how many benefits there are when it comes to real estate investing. So it's a good idea to pay attention and listen to what's going on with this, because there are a lot of things you're going to probably learn on this episode that are going to be mind-blowing.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that, Yonah. Because I agree. A lot of times when I hear taxes and talk to your CPA and all this, my brain it shuts off. But when you really start putting some numbers, to what you can save in taxes and not give it to the IRS, that's when, okay, hey, I sit up in my chair, I start paying attention a little bit, which, like Yonah said, I definitely encourage the audience to do that and really listen to what Yonah has to say, and so, with that, Yonah, really, so before we go into the cost segregation and how much money you can save with taxes, right? Let's talk about mentors for a sec, right? I think, for me, I had somebody, a mentor, so to speak, good friend of mine that, first off introduced me to the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? Which totally changed my perspective and outlook on life and my trajectory. And so, I read that book, had the mindset shift. And then I had a good mentor. So talk about your mentor, what that meant to you, how to find a good mentor, what that looks like.
And I'm glad you brought up this subject, because it's profoundly affected me in many different ways, many different areas throughout my life. But most importantly, I think I've had several mentors over the years, and each one in kind of a different way has helped me or affected me. But one thing that I've learned that is quite fascinating, I host a podcast as well, Weiss Advice, and talk to hundreds of extremely successful real estate investors. And this is something that comes up over and over and over again, is the power of a mentor, the power of someone who you have in your corner who has more experience than you. And you cannot underestimate the power of mentor. So the first real kind of real estate mentor I had was actually not this friend that I had met in the parking lot that one day, who, a good friend of mine, had the apprenticing under him. And don't get me wrong, he was amazing and really changed my life in that regard, in terms of understanding real estate for what it was and getting my first kind of involvement in it. But I had another close friend who was a real estate developer of industrial property. He actually started out as a broker of industrial properties, logistics properties, was extremely successful in that, and ended up started investing on his own, and then started a development company. And to this date, he's developed probably like 20 million square feet of high class, A class industrial properties, Amazon warehouses, built to suit, high tech type stuff. So really amazing guy, and I'm blessed to call him a friend. And he actually has had also a very profound influence on me in a lot of ways. So I have, like I said, I've had many mentors over the years, and it's been an amazing ride, because you learn a lot, and especially about finances, about just the little things that you don't even think about. There are so many things in life that we take kind of for granted that you don't even know about. And here's one example, right? We're going to talk about cost segregation today. Probably most people haven't even heard of it. And I know that because every time I give a webinar, whether it's to real estate investors or aspiring real estate investors, or even to CPAs, and I ask, what's your familiarity with cost segregation? The majority of people, it's always either they haven't heard of it, or they've heard of it a little bit but don't really understand it. So this is just one example of something so powerful in real estate that can be literally a game changer when it comes to your wealth building. And for a lot of people, it's just like, I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah. Well, and I was one of those, right? First it started when I got into, passive investing, primarily apartment syndications, right? I had no idea really even what syndications was. So then I had to educate myself around that. And then you start, as that process, unravels, then you learn words like cost segregation and, what the depreciation of that looks like, and how much, tax write-offs you can accelerate, right? Accelerated depreciation. You start learning all these terms, right? as a result of having mentors or people that's a little further along in your space and just educating yourself, on all these benefits of real estate. And for me, the mentor, like, and I'm glad you clarified that too in your experience, as well, of just it helps me raise the bar, right? It
Mm-hmm.
just when I'm around, like mentors or people in this space that are performing at a high level or really hold themselves to a high standard, right? It makes me, evaluate and hold myself to a higher standard as well, right? Because it's so easy to just kind of do the day to day. Get up, work, go home, eat dinner, watch TV, go to bed, right? It's so easy, and a lot of Americans, I know I was one of them at one point where it was like that. It just was kind of the day to day. Now I will share, I always had the will to do something else, or I could never sit still. My wife, we're sitting there watching Netflix, and she's like, just sit down, chill, watch an hour of TV, right? I'm like, all right, I got to force myself to do that because I'm definitely always on the go. But it helps me raise my standards, and just being around people that want to grow, that want to develop themselves, and really all areas of life. We're talking primarily real estate here, but the podcast is called Optimal Wealth, and that wealth
Mm-hmm.
can be in your being a good father, being a good husband, spiritually, physically, mentally, like all this stuff, I believe ties together and helps us grow as human beings, right? So okay, so let's go ahead and shift here. So let's work backwards a little bit. So I know you started in real estate, you got your broker's license, sounds like you started doing some flips from there. But I want to kind of fast forward to the passive investment, your first passive investment that you made. If you could walk us through that, what that process looked like. How did you pick your sponsor? What was the due diligence that you went through, questions that you asked the sponsor, and maybe highlight two or three that, you would recommend investors to ask, and that really helped you on your journey.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, the first passive investment I had was a really interesting deal. So obviously, you mentioned finding the sponsor, finding the person to invest with. That's always the most important factor when you're dealing with real estate investment, because there are deals, so many deals. But if you have a great deal, but an average or less than average sponsor, they won't do a good job. If you have an average deal, so to speak, but a great sponsor, they can actually squeeze a lot out of that and get a lot out of a property like that. And obviously, you want to entrust your hard-earned money with someone that number one, is not going to lose it, not going to run away with it, but hopefully is going to be a good steward of that money. So it actually took me a couple of years in that I ended up meeting someone, and in the space that I'm in, I'm very, very blessed to have an incredible network, because our company is the biggest conservation company in the country. I have thousands of clients, and many of them, I should say, not most of them, but many of them are very highly distinguished real estate investors and operators across the country. So I have that kind of going for me, is that I have a great deal of a great network, really. And so I'm able to, kind of glean from them and find deals through just those people that I'm around with. So that's the first thing I would say. One of those operators was, someone that I met through the congregation, through networking, and spent, some time with them in person. And that was important to me. And then they had a bunch of deals going on, but one deal came across their desk, which was a self-storage deal. So my first investment was, as a passive investor, was in storage, and it was an existing facility that had had land and opportunity to develop. So there was a huge upside. And that, believe it or not, that was my first investment. And it was actually, it was meant to be, I think, about a 5-year hold, the business plan, and ended up selling in about 21 months. So they did so well, and they had an offer for someone to buy it. And we made literally 260% profit on that deal. So having a first investment, getting literally knocked out of the park in terms of returns was was very inspiring. And so it obviously led me to invest more, not only with this sponsor, but other sponsors as well.
Yeah. Well, and so definitely raise the bar as far as expectations. Right.
That's true, because none of my other investments have done anywhere near that
Yeah.
well.
Well, and I'm curious. Let's touch on that just a little bit because as we know, right, interest rates. I mean, we kind of assumed they would go up, but not at the rate that they did, right, in a short amount of time. So,
Mhm.
have you had any investments since then? Again, we've done a total of 8 here since that first storage investment that have maybe not gone as projected, or interest rates affected that, or
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
In fact, several have, because many of the investments that I made were during 2019, 2020, 2021, where obviously the interest rates were doing very well, and then obviously all of a sudden started spiking. And one investment in particular, which obviously was they always have great underwriting and great potential benefits there. However, you have to be careful, and you have to really understand what those investments are. And so one of those investments was a self-storage property with a different operator, but it was a portfolio, actually a pretty large portfolio spread across several states. And this was an operator that I had known, I had dealt with, I had done business with, and knew to be very trustworthy, very good operators. Right? They knew their business. They owned thousands of storage units. And the business plan here was, to buy this, and there was some redevelopment. That there was obviously upside, but part of the business plan was a refinance in the first, after 6 months or so, which completely, because this investment, I believe it was at the end of 2021. So this was, yeah, probably like December 2021, and then in 2022. I believe, am I getting the dates right?
yeah.
Yeah.
March 2022, I
March
think.
2022, like
Yeah.
the interest rates just like spiked up, right? So
Mhm.
the business plan was, in like April, May, like after 6 months, do a big refinance and, pull out a huge amount of cash from the project, get returns, et cetera. Well, guess what? That didn't happen, right? And so
Right.
since that point, I believe we've had a few distributions, but distributions have definitely been on hold in for the last 12, 16 months or so on that property. So, thank God there hasn't been a capital call or anything like that, but it just has not really shown much in terms of upside so far. So when eventually they do sell, I think that's obviously we'll see the benefit there, but up until that point, it's going to be difficult.
Yeah, well, and thanks for highlighting that experience too, because I think it's super important for the investor that's just getting started out, or had maybe 1 or 2 deals that they did get home runs on back in 2019, 2020, right, or early 2021. Because you start having these expectations that this is how these deals are going to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was actually involved in a few as well that got affected by the interest rates, and distributions have stopped. And thankfully, I'm with a good operator, like what you said, right? I'm good operator, because the benefit of having investing with a good operator is they have a good business plan, and they got good backbones. Like, this one's vertically integrated, so they got in-house property management and in-house construction, so they have a lot more control over the renovations and things like that. But it's important, because 2 to 5 year investment, when you're seeing these deals go full cycle, which means they sell in 2 to 3 years, next thing you know, you're kicking the can down the road a little bit. 4 or 5 years starts becoming a reality of these deals,
Right.
or could even be 7 years, right? You just never know. So just keep that in mind when you are getting into these deals. Definitely the returns could be very lucrative, right? And you can definitely get these home runs, but like me, I'm happy with doubles, right? If I
Yeah.
could just keep me moving around the bases, hit the home run every once in a while, that's awesome. But just, this is building generational wealth over time. This is not your get rich quick formula for just getting a bunch of money in the next 6 months or 1 year, 21 months or whatever. So definitely keep that in mind. And thanks again for highlighting that. So So now with, that experience there, let's talk about what you do, Yonah. What everybody's been waiting for. I know everybody's on the edge of their chair here, want to talk about cost segregation. But again, like Yonah said at the beginning, this is super. I mean, when I first heard about this, I didn't understand the power of how much savings I could really, accumulate until I got my first K1, right? When bonus depreciation was 100%. And, I got a big loss on that K1, which I'll probably go into a little more here after you explain it. But, once you start seeing these numbers, it makes it real, right?
Yeah.
So, all right. So, and I didn't do you justice on the intro. So Yonah has saved hundreds of millions of dollars, for property owners, right? And so again, he is referred to as the cost segregation king. So, definitely pay attention to what Yonah's about to go over here. And Yonah, I'm going to kick it to you and tell us, what is cost segregation, the benefits, give us the rundown.
Absolutely. So conservation is a weird name for just a very powerful income tax savings tool or strategy. And so when you investing in real estate, you want to have a lot of different strategies in your toolbox, and this is one of them. And I should note, probably one of the most powerful ones at that. And conservation in general is just an accelerated form of depreciation. So depreciation is a tax deduction that any property or business owner gets if you buy a property, right? The IRS says, hey, you can actually write off the entire value of that property. Okay. Now you can't do it all at once. And so that's kind of the downside a little bit, but over a long period of time, over a kind of an arbitrary number, a 27.5-year period for residential, including multifamily, or a 39-year period for commercial properties, they say now you can actually write off this whole value. Well, when it comes to real estate, we're looking for as many deductions as we possibly can, or really in business in general, because the tax code is really an incentive guide. The IRS is showing you or telling you what different activities you should be doing in order so that you can contribute to the economy. And so they're going to give you tax deductions in order to do that. And so one of the biggest ones is real estate. It's pretty amazing. I'm not sure why that is exactly how that came about, but it's real estate is definitely one of the biggest things. So conservation, again, is just an advanced form of depreciation. Now, depreciation is a borrowed term. It doesn't actually mean that your property is going down in value. It just means that you're able to take this tax deduction as if your property is going down in value. And so it's not intrinsic to the property. So because you could buy a property that was built in 1922, and you're able to start now today that 27.5 years based on your purchase price, whatever it was. And so you're able to take that deduction again a little bit every single year. Cost seg is the ability to break down the property into its components and show that different things in the property actually depreciate faster. So for example, you'll have things like appliances or furniture or carpeting, window treatments, anything that's non-structural actually depreciates on a 5-year schedule, which allows you to take the value of those items at a faster rate. And so we're able to pull from that pool of potential deductions that I may never see, and now take a lot of those deductions up front. So again, it's a powerful cash flow mechanism that allows you to take bigger deductions during the earlier years of ownership.
Yeah. And so so now I want to put some numbers to that, right? Now again, this was when cost segregation was 100%, right? Or I'm sorry, when bonus depreciation was 100%.
Right.
I received a $30,000 loss on a $50,000 investment, right? Which that means I get to take a big portion of that loss against my capital gains, if not all, right? If it's done correctly. Again, check with your CPA and depending on your tax situation, against, the cash flow and the gains once that deal sells, and that goes and that turns over year to year, right? You don't never lose that. So until that deal does go full cycle. So say if it's a 5 or 7 year, deal that, sells in 7 years, I still get to take that amount against deduction from the capital gains, right?
Yeah.
Which is that's the poof moment right there, right? Like that is the power of what cost segregation can do because you're writing off things. And it was very helpful. If anybody's interested, I encourage y'all to go on Bigger Pockets. Yonah Weiss, he actually walks through a property and explains what you can write off, and helps. And I'm a visual learner too, so it was kind of nice to visually walk through that property with you and really understand. You're pretty much writing off anything that's not attached to the property, right?
Right.
Lamps, flooring, right, cabinets, countertops, right, all that stuff, correct?
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, so now I want to shift over to another tax strategy. Let's talk about, short-term rentals. And now the short-term rental market has definitely changed in the past year or two. So you definitely got to be careful going in, and HOAs have really hammered down, what they will and won't allow. So, definitely be mindful going in. But say you get a short-term rental, right, in an area that's doesn't have an HOA, or you can do the week to week, and what are the tax advantages of that?
So there's an amazing thing when it comes to depreciation. As I mentioned, it's a great tax benefit, but one of the limiting factors, and I'll get into the short-term rentals, I just want to kind of give this preface beforehand, because one of the limiting factors when it comes to real estate with cost segregation is being able to use the deductions, right? So we talked about your K1 that had this huge loss, and you can use that against your passive income, your rental income. You can use that against capital gains, right, of other passive investments. However, besides that, there's a limitation that you can't use that against your W-2 or any source of active income unless you are considered a real estate professional, which means you or your spouse are full-time in the real estate trader business. Now, if that's not you, if you just have a W-2 and you invest in real estate, like a lot of people passively invest, then you're going to have this limitation, okay? There's one exception besides for the real estate professional status, and this is we like to call it the short-term rental loophole. And that's why short-term rentals have become such a powerful tool when it comes to cost seg, because even if you're not a real estate professional, you're able to use cost segregation study. And if you materially participate, meaning you self-manage your property, and there's some basic hour requirements in terms of that material participation, but you're essentially able to write off the entire value against your active income. Okay, which is huge. Again, you do not need to be a real estate professional. You can be, and I have many clients, hundreds of clients literally, that are doctors, that are in the medical profession, that are lawyers, that are doing other professions, have IT professional, high W-2 earners, but have no way to use depreciation against their high W-2 incomes until this short-term rental strategy came along and was kind of discovered, because I think the short-term rental space kind of blew up. This has been in the tax code for years, but it was always kind of focused on hotels and things like that. And so people didn't really put two and two together when it comes to Airbnbs, but the same strategy applies. So again, you do not need to be a real estate professional, and you're able to use, by doing a cost segregation, use this against your W-2. So again, medical professional, whatever, high W-2 earner, you own and self-manage a Airbnb property, you're able to use the cost seg, the depreciation, against your active W-2 income.
Yeah. Wow. And so if you could, for people that don't know, what qualifies to be a real estate professional, and then also like how many hours do they have to be involved in their short-term rental?
So it's real estate professional is a very kind of grueling, requirement. So the first thing is you need to be the majority of your time spent, meaning you cannot have another full-time job. You have to be full-time in real estate. Okay, so that's the first thing. Now, the main requirement is that you have, again, full-time real estate, but there's also an hourly requirement of a minimum of 750 hours a year, which means you cannot just retire and also have this status. That's a little bit, for someone who's not full-time in real estate, it's pretty daunting, right? You can't really do that. However, if you are in a short-term rental space and doing it that way, you're actually able to use, it's a minimum requirement of 100 hours per year. Okay. And you have to spend more time than any other individual. So there is that requirement but it's pretty doable. And like I said, I've had hundreds of people use this strategy and it's pretty doable. So again, 100 hours is much more doable than the majority of your working hours. And like I said, for someone who's a busy professional, you may think, well, I can't, how am I going to also manage an Airbnb on the side? Believe it or not, there are plenty of kind of mentorship, and going back to the mentorships program, there are programs out there, there are classes and courses out there that you can take pretty minimal hour just to learn how to do it. And I've done it. In fact, I've been highly considering investing in short-term rentals, but haven't pulled the trigger on that quite yet. Literally about a half an hour to an hour a week is all it takes. Okay. So we're talking about a very minimal requirement in terms of how much time you need to actually spend in self-managing a short-term rental. So it's definitely doable.
When somebody's looking at buying a short term, so it's such an easy it's like, why isn't everybody doing this, right? When I hear you say that, that's my first thought. Like, I should go out and buy a short-term rental right now, still, and be able to write so I can take some losses against the W-2, right? I mean, you see that number at the end of the year that you're like, what can I do to get this down, right? And limit my money to the. And so you said you're starting to. Are you thinking about pulling the trigger on this short-term rental strategy, or?
Yeah, it's such a powerful tool, and I've like I said, I've used, I've seen a lot of people use this strategy, and so it's something that I've I've thought about and really kind of thinking about it in terms of doing it myself. I personally am not so good at that and wouldn't enjoy it that much. However, I do have a daughter who is 19 now, and she's expressed interest in it. So I've been in discussion with her, trying to get her trained up a little bit in learning how to do this, and I think we're going to pull the trigger pretty soon.
Yeah. What are some I mean, and this is probably a broad question. So, if we can tailor it down, but just to help give the audience an example of, what the savings could be on a short-term rental, and really myself too. I'm very curious in this. So maybe somebody making $100,000 or $200,000 a year, right? Let's use 100 just for easy math, right? They're paying $30,000 in taxes, say 30%. What are typically the savings on a short-term rental? Maybe if you can give a range, because it definitely depends on the area. We're not talking, let's not go super luxury, or, maybe just right in that middle range. What are some savings that you see based on these cost segregation studies?
Yeah, typically, and again, it does depend. There are a lot of factors, but typically we're dealing with about between 20 to 30% of the purchase price that we can then take at an accelerated depreciation basis. Now, it used to be 100% bonus depreciation, which means you can take that 20 or 30%, 100% of that upfront in the first year. It's no longer that amount, which means you can no longer take that huge amount right off in the first year. Currently in 2024, it's at 60% bonus, but still that gives you a huge amount of depreciation upfront in the first year. So again, let's say you buy a $500,000 property, right? We're not talking about like this huge luxury. You're in the Smoky Mountains or something. You're buying like a 3-4 bedroom. I don't know how much it is right now, but it used to be that way a couple of years ago. I'm actually looking in right now in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Georgia. That's a great kind of short-term rental, vacation rental kind of space. And over there, yeah, you can buy a 3-4 bedroom for about, $400,000 or $500,000. If you were to buy a property that size, you would be getting, again, let's say 20%, just keep it very conservative. 20% of that's $100,000 that you can then take. 60% of that the first year, $60,000 write-off. So you may be putting a down payment of about $100,000 on this, and in the first year getting a $60,000 tax write-off. That's pretty huge, especially given the fact that we're not even talking about the benefits of running a short-term rental, which come with, obviously the cash flow, because they cash flow a lot more than regular long-term rentals do. So there's a lot, there's a huge advantage there.
Yeah. And if you could, yeah, and thanks for giving that example, because it's definitely helpful to put some actual dollar figures, which 60%, $60,000, like, again, why isn't everybody doing this? And I'm going to probably start analyzing some short-term rentals here after we get off this call. But But if you could, because I know there was a bill on the table that they're trying to get it back to 100%. Do you have any updates on that? I haven't checked it maybe in the past week or so, but is there any updates of that? Has that passed or?
Yeah, unfortunately, there hasn't been an update yet. Back in January, the bill passed in the House of Representatives and was passed, to reintroduce 100% bonus depreciation in a big tax bill that had, a dozen other things in it. So it wasn't just about the bonus depreciation, but it was lumped in together there. It's passed along to the Senate, but so far we haven't seen any path forward with even it getting to a vote. So we'll see. I'm not sure what's holding it up exactly, but as far as I've heard, it hasn't even been brought to a vote yet in the Senate. But once it does, if and when it does, obviously that can be a huge factor bringing back the 100% bonus.
Right, right. Which, again, we don't know until it actually passes and, goes through the necessary steps there. But a lot of people are very encouraged that it will pass.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I mean, even from Congress, you think they make pretty good money, right? They would love to use these strategies as well. So I think it's in everybody's best interest for that bill to pass. And yeah, then you go back to 100%, which again, imagine taking 100% of that down payment you put $100,000 on. That's huge. So all right, well, that was very helpful. Thanks for going through all that too. And again, we'll leave your information. So if anybody wants to reach out at the end of the show, they could definitely have that to go dive a little deeper into cost segregation. Or if you're an apartment owner and want to take advantage of this strategy, Yonah Weiss is the man to call here. So Yonah, let's go into what I like to call the fire round.
Sure, let's do it.
So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you 4 questions. And first one being is if you could recommend a real estate book that really changed the trajectory of your life, your journey through real estate. And another one, we talked a little bit about this, but mindset as well. Mindset, I believe, plays a huge part of what we're doing. So if you could recommend a real estate book and then a mindset book.
Absolutely. So the real estate book, and I've read, dozens and dozens of books on this, on real estate as well as just in general business. One book that stands out to me is, and again, it's not a real estate book per se. Actually, let me give a real estate book. Brian Burke has a great book that was published by Bigger Pockets a few years ago, called The Hands Off Investor. Really great book about passive investing. So highly recommend that. If there's, but one book that was probably one of the first business books that I ever read, which was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's just so, I mean, it's such a classic, but it's also just something that it's one of those books that has fundamental principles in life and just what, how a person is supposed to act, how a person is supposed to, view life in general and business, and just be a good person and strive for the best in their life. And so, yeah, highly recommend that book. I wish there were, so much time in the world to list off a bunch of other books. But one advantage that I have in hosting my podcast is I also ask every single guest that I've had a book that's given them a paradigm shift. And I have this huge reading list that just keeps getting bigger every week. So I haven't gotten to all of them, but read, quite a few dozen.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely second both of those books that you mentioned because I've read those. I actually got them on my shelf here in my office, and yeah, great books, especially the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I think I'm going to go back and reread that just because there's so much great information. Again, like you said, just the basic principles of living life, right, in all areas. But I'm the same way. I love asking that question because I'll jot the books down and like my list, just like yours, keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I've even had some guests, like I've had 3 or 4 guests in a row, or maybe not in a row, but 3 out of 4 guests recommend the same book, and I'm like, all right, that's moving to the top. I got to read that book, right? So yeah, definitely pretty cool there. And well, so next question is, can you share a specific goal or dream that holds special significance to you? So kind of to sum that up is, what's your why? What's driving you and your goals and dreams in life there?
Yeah, so I know a lot of people cliche, they talk about the family and talk about the freedom to spend time with their family and do all that. I definitely agree with that. I have a big family man. I have 6 kids. I definitely relate to all of that. But something that really drives me is the ability to give not just to give back, kind of in a general sense, but to really give and strive to do more for people. And one way that I do that is and currently is just literally I love to make introductions on a daily basis. I love to kind of just connect people and create a community of people in the real estate world, which very actively do that on LinkedIn, for example, in the investment community there. But giving charity and helping those less fortunate than me. I've been blessed to do a large amount of that over the years, and that's really the only goal that I ever have is like, how can I give more? And so that's something that I definitely see as kind of that one striving why.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think that just really speaks to, man you are and, the level of integrity you have there and the way you carry yourself. And, for me, same thing. My why, I go to my family, I want to create more time, freedom, be that present father, which you don't have to do this to be able to be present, but it definitely, helps you be work optional, which gives you more time to spend with the people you love, right? But
Hmm.
but a goal of mine this year, going back to what you said, was, definitely giving back. And it's easy for me. I actually just came from a charity event, right before we started the podcast. And it's nice to donate some money and stuff, but one of our goal is this year is to how do we show up and give time too, right? And I'm actually going to pack the kids in the car. Me and the family are going to go down and really give back, whether it's out of Salvation Army or, just helping those that are less fortunate than we are, and teaching my kids that as well.
Yeah,
Just the power of giving. And so that's, yeah. Thanks for clarifying that, because most of the answers we do here are time, freedom, and spending more time with the families. Which again, that's definitely a, a big why for me. But I love the giving back piece as well.
absolutely.
Yeah. So with that said, how do you structure your day to maintain a healthy work-life balance? Do you have a morning routine you can share with the audience?
Yeah, so mine's going to be a bit abnormal because I'm a religious Orthodox Jewish person, and we have very very serious kind of rituals and praying services and things like that. So every single morning, I definitely have a morning routine. I spend several hours before doing anything, literally before checking my phone, before anything, just in prayer and meditation and studying, reading from the Bible and from other sources. And that's something that, we do. People do it on different levels. I happen to take it very seriously. And so I'm on kind of, that kind of higher level on a personal regard. But, I feel that's really important. I don't want to talk to anyone before I talk to God, and so that's the first thing I do in the day is kind of focus on that. And so I get up really, really early, kind of before the sun gets up, and focus on that. And so so by the time I get to work or get to doing anything else, my mind and my kind of spirit and everything like that is totally aligned with what I want to do in this world, what I want to focus on. And so it's much. I believe that's a very powerful tool.
Yeah.
But again, a bit, like I said, a bit abnormal, very different. It's not something that everyone can kind of take on that regard, each to their own. But you have to kind of figure out what you want to do and go from there.
Yeah, no, I love that. And, I too, try to get up early in the morning, prayer, meditate really before I'm not always perfect about not checking my phone. I got to get out of that habit. It's like so easy to just these bad habits that accrue. But, I feel like when I do take that time for myself, I was actually just talking with another person about this. I'm able to show up better with my family, with my kids, with the people I come in contact, at work or, just the day to day, right? Like I'm less irritated, I'm able to be a little bit more flexible, right? I'm more focused at work, and it's just amazing how these practices can definitely, help level your game up, right? So to speak, in life and your journey and, and things and just to sum it up, just help me show up as a better person, right? A better father, better
Yeah.
husband, a better coworker, right? And yeah, just definitely love that. And if you could be remembered for one thing, last question here, what would that be?
Really going back on what my why and what that was, that's what I want to be remembered for. I want to be remembered that I was a person who gave back to the community, who helped other people, who kind of lived their life and their mission to focus on others and to give back. So definitely that would align with everything that I do.
Yeah, no, I love that. Well, Yonah, great conversation today. I really, really enjoyed having you, and thanks for giving back, to us and our audience here, right? And just taking the time. I don't know, I can't remember if we mentioned this before we started the podcast, but it's 1 o'clock where Yonah's at right now, right? It's 1 o'clock in the morning. He's sitting there doing a podcast here, helping educating us on cost segregation, how to save taxes. I mean, talk about giving back there and dedication. So. We definitely appreciate it, Yonah. And if you could tell the audience where they can contact you and learn more about what you're up to.
Sure. Yeah. You can find me on all the social media platforms. I'm very active. You can, especially LinkedIn, as I mentioned, but all the other places. But do me a favor, don't just hit that follow button or connect button. Take 10 seconds and write a little note that you saw me on Jarod's podcast, you heard me on the podcast. It goes a long way and starts a conversation. It's not just like another person you're following and kind of passively watching, but you can actually, love to meet. I love to meet people, love to network. And the more every single person that you meet opens up a whole new world of opportunities and build, ways to help and ways to kind of see where, maybe your next investment will come from, where your next business partnership will come from, maybe where your next, who knows what. But I think that's really important. So yeah, take the time, do that, and definitely happy to connect with everyone.
Yeah. Well, and I tell you, yeah, Yonah's definitely very active on LinkedIn. So that's probably the best place to connect with him. And like you said, shoot him a message. And, it's just taking that action, right? Just taking that action. And you never know, just taking those next right steps, who, like Yonah said, who you're going to meet, that next business partner. We hear it all the time, don't we, Yonah? Like I went to a conference, met my business partner. Now we got a multi-million-dollar business, right? Like you just never know, but just keep showing up. And I'd ask you a favor too, if you got some value out of this podcast today, please take a minute to, share it with a family member or a friend, like and review, if you got something out of it, it definitely helps us out and goes a long way. And Yonah, thanks again for coming on here today. And yeah, we'll talk soon.
Pleasure, Jarod. Thanks again.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to the Optimal Wealth Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Most importantly, be sure to optimize your results and take massive action on what you have learned here today. For more, visit optimalequitygroup.com.